We're using Math.random to generate random numbers in Java. First, we'll do an example with a random number between 1 and 10, and then we'll do an example with a random number between 1 and 100. So we'll start with an example between 1 and 10. Let's make int random number equals, and then in brackets, we're going to put int. And then in a second set of brackets, we're going to put math.random, and I'll explain what all this means after. We're going math.random times 10 plus 1. And then if we print this out and run it, then we'll just get a random number between 1 and 10 for every time we run it. So we get 7, 1, 1, 1. And for some reason Eclipse is glitching out and printing out the last program that I had printing out messages about tacos in here. So that's what all that is right there. So if we keep running this, then we get numbers between 1 and 10. It's taking a while to get to 10, but here we go. Come on, 5 more times. It'll happen. 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. There was a 10. Okay, so what is actually happening in here? Let's make a second random number. I'm just going to make this one a double, and we're just going to store the value of math.random inside of it. I'll name it random number 2, and then we'll just print it out. And it's just going to give us a value between 0 and 0 point repeating 9. So math.random, all it does is gives you a value between 0 and 0 point repeating 9. And if we store this in a double, then we can get that decimal value. Whereas up top, when we stored it inside of an int and cast it to an int, then that's when we just got whole numbers. So we'll print this out and we'll run it a bunch of times. It's just going to give us a random number between 0 and 0 point repeating 9 every single time. And lots of the time when you want a random number, obviously you want it to be a whole number. You want like something between 1 and 10 or between 1 and 100 or something. So that's why we put it inside of an integer. Let's change this back to an int. And when we put it inside of an integer, we need to include a cast to an integer, which is just converting the double value that math.random gives us into an integer value so that we can store it inside of our integer variable. Otherwise, we get an error because Java says, hey, you're trying to store a double value inside of an integer variable. So we need to convert our math.random value into an integer. But when Java converts doubles to integers, all it does is it cuts off the decimal. It doesn't do any rounding, it just cuts off the decimal. So we would go from 0 and 0 point repeating 9 as our range to just 0 as our range, because any decimal is going to get cut off. So right now, if we ran this, then our second number is just going to be 0 every single time because we're converting the number to an integer by getting rid of the decimals. So we'll just get 0 every single time. And up top, when we wanted our random number between 1 and 10, we did math.random in brackets. And then we had a times 10, which takes our number between 0 and 0 point repeating 9 and turns it into a number between 0 and 9 point repeating 9 because we've multiplied our value by 10 now. But then if we convert this to an integer, then that would just give us a number between 0 and 9 because again, Java's just going to cut off whatever decimals are there. So like this, we would just get a number between 0 and 9. And then that's why we had our plus 1 in there, just to raise that value by 1. So then we automatically end up with a value between 1 and 10. And of course, our second example is going to look pretty much exactly like the first one. I'll call this random number 3. And we'll go int math.random. And this time we're just going to multiply it by 100. And we still need the plus 1 if we want a value between 1 and 100. Otherwise, we would get a value between 0 and 99. Okay, so we have our value between 1 and 100. And let's just take a look at what would happen without the parentheses around these. And we'll print out that third number 2. And all of these now are just going to give us the result of 1. Because what's going to happen, since we took out the parentheses around the math.random, what's going to happen is this original value from math.random, the number between 0 and 0 point repeating 9, is going to be converted into an integer right away. Before all this other stuff happens with the times 10 plus 1, it's just going to convert that value into an integer, which gets rid of the decimal, which just leaves us with the value 0. And then in all of these examples, we had our plus 1 because we wanted a number between 1 and something. So our value every single time now is just going to be 1 because it's going to do 0 times 10, which is 0 plus 1. And then 0 times 100, which is 0 plus 1. So all of these now are just going to give us the result 1. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'll put some links in the description to some of my longer Java videos and also to some awesome Java books to check out for anybody getting started learning Java.